23 of Acts last week. If you missed it, we covered verse 11. So there you go. It won't take you long to review. Him putting us where he wants us. I think back in when I was growing up, we moved to Texas in 1980, the spring, summer of 1980. And for those of you who were alive in 1980, it was really hot in Texas. That was like, I don't remember how many days it was over 100, but it was record-setting stuff. So when we moved here from Tennessee, we thought we had moved to hell. I mean, it was hot. Well, and I love Texas, but I'm just saying. And we had, like a window unit in one room, so we'd huddle in there and just sweat all the time. And so we would go to the mall just to be in air conditioning. We'd drive over to Longview just to be in air conditioning. We drove to Town East Mall in Dallas to be in different air conditioning, It just to have coolness, So I use that as a segue into malls. And you think, malls are not that big a deal anymore. No offense to any of you if you own a mall, but, everybody just does everything on their phone. They order everything, and so people don't go there as much anymore. But I would always go, especially like when we went to Town East. They had all those decks, and, you had the top tier, and I liked the bottom one. That was where all the food was. But, they had all those tiers and everything, and you would go to the mall marker. Remember those? And you go, okay, and it'd have a big X, and it'd go, you are here, okay? And then that provided some direction, because now you knew where you were, and then, so now where are we headed to, and how do we get there? All right, so let me move that over a notch. You ever watched a TV show or a movie, and they go, well, I'm leaving for California because I got to find myself, Got to find myself. What the heck? What does that mean? If we want to know where we are, we have to find Him. That's our mall marker. You are here. You are here according to where He is. Everything works off of that. And then when we figure out where we are with Him, then He provides direction. Now, here's where we're headed. And I'm going to get you there. That's the journey that we're on in life. And so maybe you're in a place right now in life where you're going, I don't know what's going on. Health-wise, relatives, maybe you're taking care of family and you don't know what all that's going to look like. Maybe you're going from work to retirement. Maybe you're in work and don't know how stable that is. Wherever you are, maybe you're in high school or elementary and you don't have a clue. Quite frankly, none of us have a clue. The key to finding out you are here is getting right with Him. That is when the journey begins for us, where we start going, okay, Lord, I'm trusting you. Because if we don't have that perspective, man, it's a mess. It's random. We don't know why everything happens. We think that we're alone. We feel isolated. We don't think we can overcome it, etc. It's hard enough when you know He's in charge. But you have something to hold on to. Now, so we're going to look at Paul, the Apostle Paul, and how it wasn't any different for him. It wasn't any different for him. And he's on a journey, and this journey, we take it so for granted that, oh yeah, that's just what Paul did. Like he knew what was going on. But he knew the one who did. And that's the example for us. So we're going to take a look in Acts chapter 23, and I'm going to review 11 just for a moment. And remember last week we really hit on it. The following night the Lord stood near Paul and He said, "Take courage. As you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so you must also testify in Rome." Okay, so God's giving him you are here. This is where you are. And this is where we're headed. Take courage. Why would he be able to take courage? Because he understands God's in charge. He has no idea how long this is going to take or the things that are going to happen. He doesn't know at this point that he's going to be shipwrecked and float out at sea for several nights. You know, he doesn't know that he's going to have the snake bite him on the island of Malta. He doesn't know, all those things that are going to happen. He doesn't know those things yet. But he knows God's in charge. And God has given him a direction. Here's what I want you to do. Now get at it. And take courage. Take courage. Because I have you. I have you. And I'm going to get you there. Now there's going to be many times in this journey where that word gets challenged. Because it's going to look like, now wait a minute, God. I thought you were going to get me to Rome. I thought we were headed there. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm about to be killed. That's what happens in Paul's life. What's amazing is how God was faithful every single time. Every single time. And he was glorified all along the way. So we see down here, we see Jerusalem. I've got it circled for you. So that's where he is. And God says, okay, I'm going to get you to Rome. So take courage. All right, so let's pick up with our text in verses 12 and 13. Now, here we are. Now, I underline the next morning. The next morning, some Jews formed a conspiracy and bound themselves with an oath not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. More than 40 men are involved in this plot. Now, here we are in that moment where God is in our presence and said the Lord stood near to Paul and he speaks to him, and we have this experience where we're like, yes, here we go. And then there's the next day. Then there's the next morning where a bunch of people get together and decide they're going to kill you. Or news comes to you that is not good and not encouraging. Or the challenges of the day begin to set on you. And that word and him being so close seems like 1,000,000 years ago. And it feels heavy. And you look in this situation, and there's so much more going on here. So much more than just Paul and these dudes. You have, God says, this is what you're going to do. This is what's going to happen. Well, there is an enemy, and the enemy isn't this group of 40. As challenging as that is, there is a spiritual battle. The enemy, Satan, does not want God's word to come to fruition. He hates it. He does not want what God has planned to occur. And he goes to great lengths to try and make sure that it does not happen. And so the enemy moves in this group. Now think about this. What in the world would make them go, you know what? We're going to kill him. We're not just going to get together and kill him. We're taking an oath. We're not going to eat or drink until we have killed this man. I mean, that's a high level of hatred. I'm not going to eat or drink until I've killed this man. You're talking about people who have allowed evil into their hearts at a pretty high level. So the enemy is brewing in an attempt to stop God's plan. Now, I think this is critical for us to recognize, all right, you are here. You and I, you are here. You're his. And he has a plan for your life. And the enemy doesn't like it. And he's going to work. Peter wrote about how he's a roaring lion that moves back and forth, studying you to find a weakness. And when he has a scent of blood, he comes in to kill. Jesus said to kill, steal, and destroy. That's the enemy we fight. It's real. So if you signed up and said, yes, I'm God's, I've accepted Jesus, buckle it up. Buckle it up. Understand, you're in the battle. You know, I think of these guys, you know, from time to time we have military deployments and so forth, and then every now and then you have somebody on the news and they're like, well, yeah, I mean, I joined the military, but I didn't expect I had to fight. And you're like, wait a minute, what? Yeah, hang on now. And we can, you know, call them snowflakes and make fun of them and all that, but that's what we do. Hey, wait a minute, God. I mean, I want to be a Christian. I don't want to go to hell. I want to go to heaven. But I don't want to have to, like, be in a spiritual battle. I don't want to have a price that I have to pay in this life. I didn't sign up for that. So, I dare say we're all snowflakes to some extent or another from time to time. Okay. So you think about these guys who have chosen to, we're not going to eat or drink until we murder this man. You think, how do you get there? How do you get there? Acts chapter 23, verses 12 through 15, it says, they went to the chief priests and the elders, and they said, we have taken a solemn oath not to eat anything until we have killed Paul. Now then, you and the Sanhedrin petition the commander to bring him here before you on the pretext of wanting more accurate information about his case. We're ready to kill him before he gets here. You know, so I'm reading this, and I feel like God shows me something that I hadn't really thought about before. So you have this group of 40. We don't know them. We don't know their background. And the enemy moves in a dark way. I think we can all agree on that. But now, the priests had become complicit. This evil, it could have been averted right here. The priests could have gone, no, we can't do that. We can't be a part of a murder, an assassination attempt. No, we'll not go there. We'll not go. Yeah, we don't like Paul or whatever. We're not going there. And yet, they allow this. And you think, how in the world do we get there? How does this happen? How did these people that have studied God's word and have, you know, that's been their life's work, how do we get here? You know, I'm gonna I use C.S. Lewis all the time, so if you don't like him, sorry. But anyway, in Mere Christianity, he writes this one passage that is just so powerful. He says, every time you make a choice, you're turning the central part of you, the part of you that chooses, into something a little different from what it was before. And taking your life as a whole with all your innumerable choices, all your life long, you are slowly turning this central thing into a heavenly creature or a hellish creature. Ooh. Now, what is awesome about this, and you can read the whole book, it's not like he's just throwing this out there out of context. Thank God for the blood of the Lamb, for all my choices that I have made that were not of him, that he covers. I still am making choices every day. And those choices are turning me towards him, or they're turning me away from him. And we see in this moment, in this powerful moment, this body, this group allowed themselves to go to a place that should never have been crossed. But it wasn't like they were right with God, right with God, right with God, and then just one day, out of the blue, oh my gosh, how in the world that happened? No, you're talking about a slow erosion that happens over time. You know, people who we step into sin, adultery or you know, stealing something or whatever, it's not like that's the first time it ever went through our mind. And we're either allowing that thing to fester and have a place in our heart and enjoying it and thinking about it. Oh, I'd never do that. But we've inched a little bit closer to that area than we should have. we've got to close that door. We've got to close that door. You know, there's times I've asked God, God, help me distaste sin like you do. Because here's just the honest thing. We like sin, or we wouldn't do it. There's something about it that is enticing. And we have to change our taste. We have to change it. Now I hate when I talk about eating because I want to eat whatever I want, just quite frankly. I love that Reese's commercials that says, you know, you hate doing what everybody tells you until that one guy goes, hey, eat a Reese's. I'm like, great, I'm all good, you know. I'm coming in line with that baby, you know. But when you're talking about eating clean or right versus eating whatever I want, that initial move over here, man, this stuff over here doesn't taste so good because it doesn't have 50 tablespoons of sugar in it, you know. But after a period of time when we have created a gap from what isn't good for me to what is good for me, we start to appreciate this. God's word says, taste and see that the Lord is good. We're to spend time with him. We're to spend time in his word and allowing him to transform our minds. And there's an appetite that is created then for him and not the other. Okay, let's move on. So these guys, the Sanhedrin has become complicit. We have this assassination plot afoot. It is coming about. It's in the works. Oh, but God's in charge. Yeah, but God's in charge. See, all that has just happened, Paul's unaware of. He's sitting in his cell. I'm betting he's praising. I've seen him do it at other times. I bet he's praying to God. I bet he's calling out, Lord, I trust you. You said you're sending me to Rome. Okay. Help me be prepared. Help me be ready. Doesn't know there is an ambush in the works. But God does. There's nothing that goes on outside of his purvey. And so in verse 16 it says, but when the son of Paul's sister heard the plot, you know, just happened that way. It just happened where Paul's nephew happened to be around. We don't hear anything else in all of Scripture about Paul's nephew. We would have no idea that he had a sister. There's no other mention of it. Oh, but God knew he had one. And he put him right in the spot that he needed him for this moment in time to catch wind of what's going on. So when the son of Paul's sister heard of this plot, he goes to the barracks to tell Paul. Thank God that he's at work in Paul's nephew. Now, in Psalm, I think of David and so many of his Psalms. Think of him and Saul, who was after him, you know, all the time and trying to kill him, and the other nations that were out to kill David. In Psalm chapter 2, verses 1 through 6, it says, why do the nations conspire and peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth rise up and the rulers band together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their chains and throw off their shackles. The one enthroned in heaven laughs. The Lord scoffs at them. He rebukes them in his anger, and he terrifies them in his wrath, saying, I have installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. David, who was under attack, David, who was in dire need and being chased, who had been told, you will be the king. He's being taught by God's Spirit, oh, this is much bigger. It's not just about you, David. Understand that. All this that's going on, it's not just about you. No, God has said this, and he has put this in motion. You don't have to worry about it. Because these people who are plotting and trying to stop this, they're being moved by an enemy that is out to stop God's plan. And he's got it. He's laughing. You know, it's not like God's up there going, I don't know how I want to get this fixed out. I don't know. I mean, I didn't know 40 guys were going to take an oath. No, he's not doing that. He's looking at him going, sorry, man. You know, it leaves these 40 guys here in just a little bit, and you think, wonder how long it took them to eat. You know, you ever thought about that? I mean, did they eat at lunch? Did they make it to supper? You know, they're all sitting around starving going, so what do we do now? I like thinking about that. That's kind of cool. So we go back to verses 17 and 18. Then Paul called one of the centurions, and he said, take this young man to the commander. He has something to tell him. So he took him to the commander. And the centurion said, Paul, the prisoner, sent for me and asked me to bring this young man to you because he has something to tell you. Now, I want to stop for a second. Again, it's one of those things we just run right over. I'm just betting not everybody in the cell could go, hey, Mr. Centurion, can you come here and go tell, you know, your commander this? And they'd be like, forget you, buddy. You know, I'm eating. And he's over there shoveling food in his mouth. He doesn't care. They don't care what the prisoners have. You know, I bet there's a lot of them shaking. Hey, it's not fair. I shouldn't be in here. Yeah, whatever. Tell that to, you know, whoever. You know, they don't care. But God is at work here. You see, God is in charge. And God grants favor. And when Paul calls out, Mr. Centurion, and he says, you rang? What you got? I need you to take this guy to the commander. Now, for a centurion to go, I mean, a centurion's over 100. The commander, I mean, you're going way up the ladder. He's not going to bother him with something trivial. Oh, but God's hand is upon this scenario. God sent the nephew, and then he connects him to Paul, and Paul connects him to the centurion, and the centurion's about to connect him with the commander, and God's about to go, no, y'all ain't touching him. This is my instrument. He's mine. And you're not going to touch him. So we move forward. Think about Genesis, all the way back in Genesis, Joseph, okay? And how God grants favor to those he has chosen. Okay? So Joseph, need to go back and read the story of Joseph and the coat of many colors and his brothers and, you know, all that stuff. He gets thrown in prison because the wife of Potiphar accuses him of something he didn't do. Okay? So he's in jail for something he didn't do. He did what was right and gets put in prison for it. You know, what would we be doing? God, I did what you wanted. I obeyed you, and I'm in prison. How does this work? I thought you had a call on my life. I thought you were doing something with my life. I thought you had told me, this is where I'm sending you. This is what I'm going to do with you. You know, something about my mom and my dad and the sheaves bowing down and the moon and the sun, all these dreams and stuff. None of this is happening. I'll never see my parents again. He's going to. He doesn't know. So here he is. Says Joseph's master took him and he put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. But while Joseph was there in prison, verse 21 says, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor. Now, I don't know about you, but if I got put in prison for something I didn't do, when I did what was right, I'd be going, God, if this is your favor, I'll take homemade vanilla. I'm going to go with another flavor, please. I don't like this. I thought you said you're granting favor. You're taking care of me. I'm yours. He granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. Now, again, this isn't what he wants. But it's all part of God's plan and how God is getting him where he wants him. Verse 22, so the warden put Joseph in charge of all of those he held in prison. He was made responsible for all that was done there. And the warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care. Why? Because the Lord was with Joseph, and he gave him success in whatever he did. You know, you ever done that? Yeah, I got success. I don't want it here. You know, you probably made the statement before. Yeah, no good deed goes unpunished. You know, I work hard at work. What do? They just give me more work. You know, it's true. It's what happens in this world. But do we trust that he's in charge? That he's allowing all this? That he's getting you where he wants you? That he is training you in a skill set or skill sets? Because that's what he was doing with Joseph. He was teaching him how to lead and how to organize and how to plan and how to all that administer. Because, you know, he was just going to go from one day to the next to becoming the second most powerful person in Egypt and save his family, the Jewish race that the Messiah would come from. No big deal. He has no idea that God's doing all that. But that's what God's doing. God is getting him where he wants him, just like he's doing that with Paul. So we go back to verse 19 through 21. It says, the commander took the young man by the hand, and he drew him aside, and he says, what is it you want to tell me? And he said, some Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul before the Sanhedrin tomorrow on the pretext of wanting more accurate information about him. Don't give in to them. How bold is that? You got this young kid. He's young enough that the guy takes his hand and carry, you know, I mean, he's probably not 25. That'd look a little awkward. You know, come on, buddy. You know. No, he's young enough where he's got him by the hand, and he's walking him over here and going, okay, now tell me what's going on. And listen to what he says. Don't give in to him. He's speaking with the boldness that God has put in him to tell him what he needs to tell him. Don't give in to them, because more than 40 of them are waiting in ambush for him. They have taken an oath not to eat or drink until they have killed him. They are ready now, waiting for your consent to their request. Now, here again, God's in charge. Because this commander would go, get away from me, kid. You know, first of all, if they are, so what? He's just a prisoner. So what? Who cares? This is all about all y'all's religious arguments and stuff anyway. Or he could have said, I don't believe you. Or whatever. Oh, no. Now, who's in charge? God's in charge. And he has told him, you're going to Rome. And oh, does he act. Yes, he does. The commander dismisses the young man with this warning. Don't tell anyone you've reported this to me. Now, is the centurion, is the commander, you know, were they godly people? Is this why this happened? We don't know. Doesn't tell us. But here's what we can learn. God's in charge of everybody. And God was going to get him to Rome. And to get him from Rome, he had to go from Jerusalem to Caesarea. That was going to be part of the route. And this, all that is going on, is being used to get him from Jerusalem to Caesarea. It's the method that God chose. And some people are aware of the fact that they're being used by God, and some people are absolutely clueless. Lewis writes in The Problem of Pain, for certain, you will certainly carry out God's purpose. So whether it's me, you, or anybody else in the world, they're going to carry out God's purpose in the ultimate end. However you act, but it makes a difference whether you serve like Judas or like John. Ooh, Judas, God had said his son would be betrayed. There would be one who would betray him to his death. That was a bad choice. He was used by God to get him where he said he would be. Versus John, the one Jesus loved. We have a choice. Okay, so we go back to 23 through 24. So what does the commander do? Man, he doesn't just go, yeah, we need to make sure we got our eyes on this guy. Oh no, he calls in overwhelming force. Overwhelming force, verse 23 and 24. Then he called two of his centurions. Now, two centurions. A centurion's over 100, okay? Calls in two of them, and he orders them, get ready of a detachment of 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen to go to Caesarea at 9 tonight. Buddy, he ain't playing around. Yeah, I mean, he called in the SEALs, the SWAT team, Delta Force, the Rangers, Green Berets, the Seabees. He called them all in. And there you go. There you go. I like it. There you go. I like it. Provide horses for Paul so that he may be taken safely to Governor Felix. Overwhelming presence here. Overwhelming force. He's not messing around. You see, we serve a God who is more than enough. Ephesians 3:20 says that he is able to do more than we ask or imagine. He didn't need any of them. Paul could go by himself and God could just strike everybody dead. That's what he wanted to do. But he surrounds him with all these people. I bet when Paul's riding on that horse, he's like, okay. Okay. Come on, where are you, 40? Bring it on. Deal with these guys. Look at Psalm 18. I bet you Paul knew this one, growing up a Pharisee. Psalm 18, 1 through 19. Listen to David as he speaks, the one who had been chased. He says, I love you, Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock. Remember that? You are here. There's that stability. He's my rock. He's the one that provides stability for me. When everything else is shaking, and when I don't know and I don't feel him, I know he's my rock. Here you are, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I called to the Lord, who is worthy of praise, and I have been saved from my enemies. The cords of death entangled me. The torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. It looked different with David than it does with Paul right here, than it does with you or I. The cords of the grave coiled around me, and the snares of death confronted me. In my distress, I called to the Lord, and I cried to my God for help. And from his temple, he heard my voice. My cry came before him into his ears. The earth trembled and quaked, and the foundations of the mountains shook. They trembled because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils, consuming fire from his mouth. Burning coals blazed out of it. He parted the heavens and came down. Dark clouds were under his feet, and he mounted the cherubim and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him, the dark rainy clouds of the sky, and out of the brightness of his presence, clouds advanced with hailstones and bolts of lightning. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot his arrows and scattered the enemy. With great bolts of lightning, he routed them. And the valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundation of the earth laid bare at your rebuke, Lord, at the blast of breath from your nostrils. He reached down from on high, and he took hold of me, and he drew me out of the deep waters, and he rescued me from my powerful enemy and from my foes who were too strong for me. And they confronted me in the day of my disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. How powerful is that? That's the God we serve. Amen. You can clap for him. That's him. That's the one we seek. His word says when we seek him, we will find him. There's a confidence there. And sometimes we struggle and go, well, I sought him and I don't know that I heard him. I don't know that I met him. I don't know whatever. Then keep seeking, because he's calling you to him. Many times it's that we're there And we give up. And we walk away, and he's right there for us. Right there. You know, I'll share it. I've told this. People who've been here for a long time, they've heard this one, but I'm going to share it just because it fits. So my dad, big guy, 6'4", 240. I'm at a basketball game. This kid down here is throwing ice at him, you know, about 10 rows down. He's throwing. This guy gets turned around, and he looks at me and starts yelling at me. You better quit throwing ice. I don't even have a cup. I mean, I'm not throwing ice at you. I'm in junior high school. I'll preface that. So I go over to my dad. I'm like, hey, Dad, this guy down here is yelling at me, saying I'm throwing ice at him. He just nodded. So I go back down. I sit down. I'm watching the game. And at halftime, you know, stuff's moving around. I'd look up, and that man is in my face. And he's pointing at me, and he's telling me, you better quit throwing ice at me or whatever. And I'm about to speak, and all of a sudden my dad goes on that guy's shoulders and spun him around. And he said, if my boy said he didn't throw ice at you, he didn't throw ice at you. And the guy went, well, I didn't say he did. And of course, I go, yeah, you did. I was pretty brave right there. He's like, oh, no. Well, I mean, it must have been somebody else. And he went down and sat down, you know, all wilted over. That's Psalm 18. That's who he is. He sees you. He sees you. And when you need him, he is there. He is there. And when you don't feel him, you just trust. Oh, but I know he's here. Because I know him. And I know what his word has said. And it's true. And when he wants to change my feelings, I'll trust him to do that. When he wants to show me something dynamic, he'll do that. But right now, I know he's here. And he has me. It changed how I walk. I'm like, yeah, man, hey, yeah, you did. I was a whole different person at that point, wasn't I? Because I know my dad. We know our dad. We know him. And it changes you. You walk confident, not arrogant, confident. You walk knowing that you're loved and that you're special and that you have a purpose. And as you walk that way, people in the world look at you and they go, hey, what do you have? What is that? What is that about you? It's him. It's him. It's not confidence in me, it's confidence in him. It changes us. So we move back to Paul in verse 23. It says, then he called 2 of his centurions and he ordered them and he said, get ready a detachment, 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen. Go to Caesarea at 9 tonight. Provide horses for Paul so that he may be taken safely to Governor Felix. And he wrote a letter. So he pulls out this parchment and he begins to write this letter. And he writes to him, Claudius Lysias, to his excellency, Governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews and they were about to kill him, but I came with my troops and rescued him, for I had learned that he is a Roman citizen. I wanted to know why they were accusing him, so I brought him to their Sanhedrin. I found that the accusation had to do with questions about their law, but there was no charge against him that deserved death or imprisonment. When I was informed of a plot to be carried out against the man, I sent him to you at once. I also ordered his accusers to present to you their case against him. Okay, so here goes the letter. He rolls it up, gives it to the guys in the detachment, and away they go. Now, so we had Jerusalem, right? We had that circled. God told him, take courage. Take courage. You see, God knew what was going to happen the next day. And he was telling him, take courage. I'm with you. I got a journey for you, and you're going to go to Rome. And to go from where he was, God knew he was going to send him to Caesarea. And this was the way he was going to get him there. Now, me, again, I'd like to choose homemade vanilla and go, can't we just, have a farewell party and get on a camel and ride over there or whatever? No, that isn't how God chose to do it. A lot of things happened to get from Jerusalem to Caesarea. A lot of things. Think about your life. A lot of things probably happened in this last 10 years of your life. Or 5 years. How about 2020 to now? Good Lord. The way the world has changed. God has you here. Right where you are. And He's in charge. And you're not where you are by accident. He has a purpose. And He is mindful of what's going on. You've got that green line there. Takes you all the way over there to Rome. There's going to be a lot of stops on the way, aren't there? There's going to be a lot of challenges, a lot of battles where he has to trust that God is in charge in spite of what he sees and is going through. God said, I'm going to get to Rome. I don't know how in the world I'm going to get there. But He's in charge. Verses 31 through 35. So the soldiers, carrying out their orders, took Paul with them during the night, and they brought him as far as Antipatris. The next day they let the cavalry go on with him while they returned to the barracks. When the cavalry arrived in Caesarea, they delivered the letter to the governor, and handed Paul over to him. The governor read the letter and asked what province he was from. Learning he was from Cilicia, he said, I will hear your case when your accusers get here. Then he ordered that Paul be kept under guard in Herod's palace. So, you think, okay, all right, we're here in Caesarea, and, God's sending me to Rome. He didn't know He's going to spend years here. He didn't know He was going to be writing letters that we would still be reading 2,000 years later. He didn't know any of that. But he trusts God's in charge. He trusts Him with what is happening, like we are called to. There's if you haven't ever read In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day, it's a great book. If you need encouragement, pick that book up. Mark Batterson, great book. God is in the business of strategically positioning us in the right place at the right time. A sense of destiny is our birthright as followers of Christ. God is awfully good at getting us where He wants us to go. Do you trust that? God's awfully good at it. But here's the catch. The right place often seems like the wrong place, and the right time often seems like the wrong time. It's our problems that prepare us for future opportunities. So someday we may be as grateful for the bad things as the good things, because the bad things helped us prepare for the good things. It's amazing how God does that. You can read through Scripture and see that. If you have any age at all, which I do, I can look back and go, well, I'll be dang. Yeah. Some of the most difficult times of my life, I look back and go, I see He was at work. He was using every bit of that to make me who I am now, and I trust for whatever it is that is ahead. Now, I'm going to close with this picture. That picture was last night. Last night. That is Matthias. That is Rachel right there. There he is back there. And so, do what? The other guy is Mr. Olympia. No, that's me. All right. So I'm holding Matthias, and I'm just enjoying hanging out. And it's amazing how in a moment like that, how many things God teaches you. Golly. I really didn't say a whole lot. I just kind of walked around holding him. And then he fell asleep. That was cool. You feel his head up against your chin. You feel him getting warmer as he sleeps. You feel him breathing. You feel his arms kind of just give out. because he's out and the way his body feels limp on you. And I'm just holding him and enjoying it. And God says, that's you with me. How amazing is that? He is so dependent on everyone around him at this place in his life. He can't feed himself. He can't do a whole lot. He's pretty dependent on Rachel. Daniel's got some input, but he's real dependent on Rachel. I think of how dependent we are upon God. And I run around trying to think I got it figured out and planned out and gonna do God's work and all that. And I'm like him, pretty dependent. And his word says in John 14:1, don't let your hearts be troubled. Yeah. I let mine get troubled all the time. I mean, Jana, it was so wonderful this week listening to me gripe. And I know it. I'm like, honey, I'm sorry. I know I'm coming home and I'm griping. I got to quit doing this. And she's gracious and, just junk and stuff and people, And he says, don't let your heart be troubled because he has it. He does. I'm not going to fix it. The weight that I feel that is heavy, I can't fix it. Our world is broken. He can fix it. Trust in him. Trust in Jesus. Matthias, he wasn't worrying. Once he got positioned, he was good. And he just kind of let it go, man. He just limped. And God's saying to us, come get close to me. And trust me. Trust me. Let me carry this burden for you. Let me love you. Let's close in prayer. Father, I thank you for your word and how you give us example after example after example. I pray that you help us not miss them. And then, as we finish today, you give us a picture where you don't even have to say a whole lot. And you just get it. You just get it. We recognize how feeble we are, how fragile we are in this life, how dependent upon you we all are. And Lord, this day, I pray for myself and I pray for this group that we'll just draw close to you. And we'll do like Matthias in this picture, and we'll just lean our head up against you and relax and receive your love, receive your peace. Transform us, Lord. Thank you for the way you love us. Let your light shine in us.